Got a shocker at the top of the ACC. The Louisville Cardinals, who haven't lost since the first week of January, upset by Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Man, that's just one of the big stories we're following here on This Week of Chase for the Championship. Hey, everybody, I'm Chris Clark. We're going to get to the Cardinals coming up in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to start in Central North Carolina. Duke is now just a half game out of first place in the ACC, and the Blue Devils making a giant push for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Oh, it was quite a 48 hours for Duke earlier this week. The Blue Devils went to the Dean Dome to take on their arch rivals, the UNC Tar Heels. These teams are on opposite ends of the standings, if you don't know already. But when they get together, anything can happen. The Heels led by 9 at the break and by 13 late in the second half, but Duke scored 5 points in the final 20 seconds, including a game-tying shot by Trey Jones at the buzzer to send this thing into overtime. The place went berserk. I was there on the baseline. It was crazy. It was close throughout the extra period. Jones tied it again with a free throw with 6 seconds left, but after he missed the second, he found himself with the ball again, launched an off-balance jumper. It missed everything but the pride of Cox Mill High School. Wendell Moore Jr. found the rebound and put it in for the W. Then just 2 days later, Duke back home to take on the 8th-ranked Florida State Seminoles. Big, bad physical team. And the Blue Devils, they got off to a great start, led by 10 in the first half. But the Noles battled back and made it oh so close the rest of the way before Duke pulled this one out, 70-65 for the W. Trey Jones and Jordan Goldwire led the team with 13. Matthew Hurt had 12. Coming off the bench, Vernon Carey Jr. also notched another double-double, 10 points and 10 rebounds, doing some work down low. Coach K says he couldn't be prouder of his entire team.
I got good guys, man. I got really good kids. We beat a heck of a team tonight. After beating a heck of a team in an epic game 48 hours before. I don't know where they got the energy the whole game to do this, but they did. They listened. They fought. We really played good defense.
Man, Duke stays at home for their next one. The Blue Devils host Notre Dame at 4 on Saturday afternoon, and then they'll take a short trip over to Raleigh to face NC State on Wednesday at 9. Florida State, they're going to look to bounce back from that loss to Duke with 2 home games. The Seminoles host Syracuse on Saturday at noon, and then Pitt visits Tallahassee on Thursday at 8. WMBB's Courtney Mims takes a look at that close loss to the Blue Devils from FSU's perspective. Courtney?
Even though the Seminoles lost to Duke on Monday night, the game showed that number 8 Florida State does deserve their spot in the top 10. It's not easy to beat the Blue Devils in their house in front of a sold-out crowd, and the Noles were competitive in this one, taking the game down to the final minute. But FSU had issues offensively in this matchup. They shot 9% below their season average from the floor and made only 3 of their 18 threes, when this year they've averaged 9 a game and shot about 17% less than their season average from the free throw line. But having said that, FSU's defense made it difficult for the Blue Devils to hit their shots as well. They forced Duke to commit 21 turnovers and held them to their 3rd lowest scoring output of the season. Also, Seminoles' Trent Forrest looked really good in this one, leading the team with 18 points, 9 rebounds, 8 steals, 4 assists, and a block. Florida State is back at home on Saturday to take on Syracuse. Reporting on Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
All right, thank you there, Courtney. Virginia, they're trying to pick up some momentum as we move closer to March. WRIC's Natalie Calabate is covering the Cavs. Natalie?
Lately, there's been one guarantee when Virginia takes the court. It will be a close one. Now, UVA's last 10 games have all been decided by 8 points or less. This week, the Cavaliers suffered a late 80-73 loss at number 5 Louisville, but they bounced back for an overtime win over Notre Dame. Against the Cardinals, UVA rallied from a 16-point deficit and took the lead late. Louisville, though, made 10 straight free throws down the stretch to win. Coach Tony Bennett was proud of his team's effort despite the result.
That doesn't take away from, how well our guys fought and how they came back, and we were better defensively, but you have to finish the play and, to give up the 8 offensive rebounds, and I think a couple of them were at crucial times, and there were some plays made, and it's just one of those games where it didn't look good early because of how they were shooting, but our guys hung in there, and again, we ran. Usually our defense keeps us in there. Well, this time our offense had to kind of keep us in there.
Then it was back home to take on the Irish on Tuesday night. Braxton Key's free throw with 2:04 left in overtime was the difference. Then the Hoos made 3 straight stops on defense to preserve the 50-49 victory. Diakite finished the game with a game-high 20 points.
It was a very important game, and we needed it very much, and we won it. But the intensity reminded me of the tournament. Both teams needed to win.
Virginia is now 16-7 overall and 8-5 in ACC play. They'll go for a season sweep of North Carolina and Chapel Hill on Saturday. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate that. Virginia's going to look to boost their tournament chances, like she said, when they visit UNC Saturday. That one tips off at 8, and then it's back to Charlottesville to square off against Boston College on Wednesday. That one also tipping off at 8. Meanwhile, Notre Dame's going to look to rest up after that game against Virginia before they face off against not one but 2 Tobacco Road teams. The Irish visit Duke on Saturday at 4, and then UNC will take a trip out to South Bend on Monday at 7. WTTV's Chris Whitlick is taking a closer look at those upstart Irish.
Well, just when you think there's no luck left for the Irish, Bray's Brigade turns the corner. The coach had a feeling his senior-laden squad would eventually come around, and after building confidence with a 3-game winning streak at the Joyce Center, the Irish made it 4 in a row with a rally at Clemson. Bray's 4 senior starters really making the difference. Rex Pfluger's 18 points and Mooney's daily double-double, enough to rally the Irish from a 7-point second-half deficit to a 61-57 victory over the Tigers. And they brought that head of steam into a battle with defending national champion Virginia in Charlottesville. And once again, the seniors rallied the Irish. A 7-point run late in the game gave them a shot at victory. But scoring against UVA's vaunted defense was tough to come by. In overtime, the teams combined for just 5 points. An Irish triple to win was just off the rim at the buzzer, and Virginia survives 50-49. But the Irish are back in the NCAA tournament conversation. Next up, a 3-game road trip ends at 7th-ranked Duke on Saturday. Covering Notre Dame, I'm Chris Whitlick.
All right, let's get back to one of the biggest upsets we've seen so far this season in the ACC. Louisville on a 10-game winning streak. That was until they went to Atlanta last night and got beat down by Georgia Tech. WEHT's Randall Parmley covering the Cardinals. Randall.
Well, it was supposed to be a relatively easy game last night in Atlanta for the Louisville Cardinals. The Cards were, of course, flying high, fresh off a nice 80-73 win against Virginia over the weekend, and they were riding a 10-game winning streak. But it turned out to be a disaster against Georgia Tech on a night when nothing went right. The Yellow Jackets upset the number 5 team in the nation, beating Louisville 64-58. Call it all systems failure last night for the Cardinals. Louisville never led in the game, and those big guns were silent. Jordan Wara, Stephen Enoch, and Ryan McMahon combined for only 9 points. Wara, in fact, had one of the worst games of his career, going 1 of 6 from the field. As a team, the Cards were ice cold, shooting only 34%. And after the game, head coach Chris Mack called it a muddy game and said his guys were not dirty enough to win. Louisville now drops to 21-4. They are also 12-2 in conference play. Up next, it's a trip to Clemson on Saturday. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
All right, great stuff as always, Randall. Thank you. Louisville's going to have to go back on the road as they look to bounce back from that loss. Like you said, Cardinals are Clemson on Saturday at 4, and then it's back to the KFC Yum Center to host Syracuse on Wednesday, that one at 7. And Georgia Tech will have a week off to celebrate that big upset victory, and they should, because that was a monster. Man, congratulations again, fellas. The Jackets won't take the floor until Wednesday when they visit Wake Forest at 7. WJBF's Brendan Robertson heard from Jackets head coach Josh Pastner after that big win over Louisville.
The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets picking up their signature win of the season with a huge upset over number 5 Louisville on Wednesday night at McCamish Pavilion, 64-58. 5 Yellow Jackets scoring in double figures. And Josh Pastner loving what he's seen from this team grow into the season.
You know, we led the entire game. We had a good start. And the bottom line is we defended at a high level. You know, Louisville's a very, very good offensive team, one of the best offensive teams in the country. It's a great win for our program. Really happy for our young men, happy for Georgia Tech. It's a great win for Georgia Tech and great win for the fans. So just really excited for us to be able to get that against a great team that's good enough to win the national championship.
That Tech defense has held its last 3 ACC opponents at home under 40% from the floor, and the win snaps a 17-game losing streak against teams ranked in the top 25, and their first win over a top 10 team since January 25th, 2017, against number 6, Florida State. Up next for the Yellow Jackets, they'll get the weekend off next Wednesday. They'll be on the road at Wake Forest. With the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, I'm Brendan Robertson. Back to you.
Thanks a lot there, Brendan. And just when it looks like Syracuse is making a nice little push for an NCAA tournament bid, they get hit with another setback. NC State came into Syracuse and won 79-74, putting those two teams about even at 7-6 in ACC play. WSYR's Mario Sacco covering the Orange. Mario.
2 minutes and 33 seconds into the basketball game, Syracuse leading scorer Elijah Hughes checked out of the game with a lower body injury and did not return. In his absence, though, 2 freshmen came up huge as Joe Girard had a career day as well as Quincy Guerrier. But in the end, it was 2 late three-pointers that gave Syracuse their 10th loss of the season.
I mean, with Elijah out, a lot of people have to step up. I mean, it's a whole team thing. So we fought hard. It's just, I mean, if I made, even 2 more, open threes, that's 6 points and we would have won. So
I mean, it's hard for everyone. Your best player is injured right now. We don't know what's going to happen with him. I think if we were reducing the turnovers and make a couple shots, that would be a totally different game today.
No matter what the circumstances are, we're going to fight. And, Joe was tremendous tonight. Quincy was great. And, just to be able to hang in with them without Elijah, shows a lot about the character. And, we wish we could have won that. But, we just got to look forward to Saturday now.
After the game, head coach Jim Boeheim told us Elijah Hughes was hurt in warm-ups. He hopes to have him available for Saturday's game against Florida State. The loss drops SU to 14-10 overall, 7-6 now in conference play. Next up, the Seminoles on Saturday. Covering the Orange, I'm Mario Sacco.
Thank you, Mario. That game at Florida State, just the start of a brutal schedule over the next week. The Orange tip off against the Seminoles at noon on Saturday, like you said. Then they're back on the road against another top 10 team when they try to take down Louisville on Wednesday at 7, although Louisville has shown they can be beaten. And after that showdown in Syracuse, NC State's going to head back up north this weekend to face Boston College on Sunday at 6, and then they host their rivals from just down the road a piece, as they say around here. Duke visits Raleigh on Wednesday at 9. And UNC is now all alone at the bottom of the ACC standings, a place they're not normally used to being. The Heels have lost 4 in a row and are 3-10. Is that right? 3-10?
Yes.
3-10 in conference play. Joining us now to take a closer look at another rough week for the Tar Heels is WNCN's Alyssa Ray. And Alyssa, how did UNC get so close to beating Duke and then just get straight run out of the gym and blown out by another team at the bottom?
Well, 2 of UNC's last 4 losses were to top 10 teams in Florida State and Duke, but their latest loss was a little tougher to swallow. The Heels went to Wake Forest and got beat 74-57. The Tar Heels trailed by as many as 26 points in Winston-Salem before a second-half surge that wasn't enough to get back in it. Cole Anthony and Christian Keeling scored 15 points apiece. Armando Bacot added 10, but after an emotional overtime loss to Duke Saturday, the jury is still out as to whether the Heels were in a funk after that game.
Saturday's game was Saturday's game. It was over with. I watched it 3 times trying to see if the result changed. It never changed one freaking time. There's not one damn thing we can do about that. You got to play today's game.
It's been hard to get our minds off of that, especially it was just such a deflating loss. But we got to get through that, and I think we were honestly probably still lingering upon that game. So, we obviously just were not ready to play tonight.
Didn't mean to pull up on you there. It's just seeing it in black and white is a little bit scary. At best, Carolina can now finish an even 10-10 in conference play. Do you even think the Heels are going to be able to find a win this week?
I think after watching the Heels take Florida State and Duke down to the wire last week, you can't completely count them out. They still have potential to pick up some wins, but the next 2 matchups aren't easy either. They face defending champs Virginia on Saturday. The Hoos are 16-7, but we know a lot of talent they lost from a year ago. And the Heels are at Notre Dame Monday, and that's going to be a tough one on the road against a much improved Irish team. Now, UNC beat Notre Dame in its season opener, and if you asked me then, I would have guessed their records would be swapped by this point, but I don't see the Tar Heels mailing it in just yet, and I think they're still going to show some fight. Chris?
I hope so. Thanks, Alyssa. You know, everyone in Chapel Hill is going to be hoping that the Heels can figure this thing out down the stretch. Appreciate you stopping by. Thank you very much. And that win over the Tar Heels was Wake Forest's first since January of 2014. Yeah, WGHP's Danny Harden covering the Demon Deacons for that big win. Danny?
Finally, these Wake Forest Deacons beat the North Carolina Tar Heels. None of the Wake players, not even head coach Danny Manning, had ever beaten the Tar Heels until Tuesday night when the Deacons pretty much dominated from start to finish, posting a 17-point victory. What a difference a year makes. In that same building, Carolina beat Wake by 38 last season.
I thought the momentum that we created in the first half gave us a lot of energy and a lot of juice going into halftime. We shot the ball at a really high clip. We made some tough shots. We shared the ball, and there was great ball movement.
We were desperate for this one. We really put in the preparation this week to try to get this one, and everybody came in and contributed and did what they needed to do to get the win.
You know, we're both going through our struggles this year together, but first time in my career, so obviously a great feeling. You know, we played them again, so hopefully we can do the same thing. I was going to do anything to win this game tonight. I wasn't walking out ahead, you know, with that bad taste, especially after how we lost the last game against Syracuse. So, you know, by any means, I was going to do whatever we had to do to win. Obviously, whether it was passing the ball, scoring the ball, rebounding, just doing whatever we had to do. We're
always happy to win an ACC game. I think whenever you can, you know, you play one of the Big Four schools, you always want to get that win as well. We're happy with the win, and we wanted to hopefully create some more momentum for us as we continue to close out our season.
The rematch with Carolina coming up on March 3rd in Chapel Hill. Reporting on the Wake Forest Deacons, I'm Danny Harnden.
Thank you, Danny. Wake Forest going to get a couple more chances to make up some ground at the bottom of the ACC this week. The Deacs will visit Miami for a 2 o'clock tip. That one's on Saturday. And then it's back home to face Georgia Tech on Wednesday. That one tips off at 7. And Miami just might be just off the bottom of the ACC, but they dominated Boston College in South Florida last night. The Hurricanes trailed early, but then used a 26-3 run in the first half to just run away with it. Miami continued to stretch the lead in the second and went on to beat the Eagles 85-58. Hurricanes guard Isaiah Wong led the way with 21 points and grabbed 5 rebounds. Miami had 3 others in double figures, too, including Chris Leaks with 16. Boston College's leading scorer was Kamar Williams, who came off the bench to put up 14 points. Up next for Miami, a home game against Wake Forest in a battle near the bottom of the ACC standings. That one's on Saturday at 2. Then it's off to Blacksburg to take on Virginia Tech. That one on Wednesday at 9. Boston College, meanwhile, will be back home to host NC State on Sunday at 6. Then the Eagles visit Virginia on Wednesday. That one tips off at 8. And Virginia Tech, they have now lost 5 in a row, with their only win in the last month coming in double OT against UNC. WFXR's Jermaine Farrell taking a closer look at the Hokies' latest loss. Jermaine.
With a promising start to ACC play, the talk was about the Hokies making the NCAA tournament. But with 4 straight losses, Tech looking to get back on track and maybe get back into NCAA contention. They had only 1 game this past week. Landers Nolly, the second, scored 29 points, but it wasn't enough as Virginia Tech lost to Boston College 77-73 in overtime in an ACC game played Saturday at Castle Coliseum. The Hokies tied the game at 66 in regulation when Naheem Aline made 2 free throws with 4.4 seconds remaining, but BC's Derek Thornton wasn't able to get a shot off before the buzzer sounded, sending the game into overtime. And BC's Stephon Mitchell made a tough layup over Nolly with 11.6 seconds to go in overtime to give the Eagles a 75-73 lead in overtime. On the ensuing possession, Nolly missed a deep 3-pointer from the top of the key with 5 seconds remaining, and Mitchell grabbed the rebound. Tyrese Radford fouled Mitchell with 2 seconds left, and the 6'8" forward made both free throws to seal the BC win.
It's athletics. It's the game. It's not comfortable. It's not ideal, but, you know, big picture stuff, you know. At the same time, you know, we've got a number of games left here, and we want to win as many of those as we can. But I do have some perspective on who we're playing and the improvements that those guys are making.
Frustration. There's no frustration. We just got to get better.
yeah, we just got to get better every day, just take one game at a time. I know we're going to bounce back.
The loss was the Hokies' 5th straight, and Tech fell to 14-10 overall, 5-8 in the ACC. The Eagles sweeping the season series from Virginia Tech. The Hokies return to the court this Saturday when they play Pittsburgh at Carilion Clinic Court, also known as Castle Coliseum. The Hokies have won 4 straight against the Panthers. The game tips off at 6. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Farrell.
Great stuff as always, Jermaine. Thank you. And unlike the Hokies, Clemson managed to put a stop to their losing streak. WSBA's Pete Yannity covering the Tigers' win on the road at Pitt. Pete?
Well, the Clemson Tigers bounced back on Wednesday night at Pitt. They'd lost 3 in a row, 2 tough games back-to-back at Virginia and home against Notre Dame. Clemson rediscovered its stroke. They shot 59% from beyond the arc. Alamir Dawes led the way with 18 points in the victory in the Steel City, and he was 4 of 7 from long range. And Amir Sims, who missed the Notre Dame game due to flu issues, well, he came back strong and contributed 12 points to the Clemson cause, while Tevin Mack scored 16 as the Tigers picked up win number 12 on the year and got to 6-8 in the ACC. And Brad Brownell noting the 2 previous losses had been ever so tight. And essentially, when Clemson's able to convert shots that look pretty good and have been there at various points this year, well, good things tend to happen.
We're giving ourselves chances most nights. Like the last 2 games we've lost, you know, we had 4 shots to tie the game or take the lead at Virginia. There's going to be a lot of people not have that opportunity at Virginia after playing a very poor first half. We just need to settle down, make a couple plays, and when we've had games where we've made those plays at the end of games, you know, North Carolina and Duke, to name a couple, Syracuse, some pretty good teams, we've been able to finish some games off.
Clemson now gets a visit from a top 5 foe, Louisville, although the Cardinals will come into Littlejohn on Saturday afternoon off an upset loss in Atlanta Wednesday night against Georgia Tech. Covering the Clemson Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
Like Pete said, Clemson looking to knock off the Cardinals. That game is set to tip off at 4. Then the Tigers have a week off before their next contest. And that game against Clemson was Pitt's last home game for a little while there. The Panthers now hit the road to take on Virginia Tech on Saturday at 6, and then they'll head even further south to visit Florida State. That one's on Tuesday. Tip-off is at 8. All right, March is getting closer and closer, and that means every game is important. So let's bring on Jason Logan from Covers.com to break it all down. Jason, big weekend in the ACC for those schools in the NCAA tournament bubble. Which program has the best shot at making a splash, if you will, and improving their chances of hearing for their name on Selection Sunday?
Yeah, I think Syracuse has a golden opportunity this weekend against Florida State. Not only are the Orange really hungry for a win over a ranked opponent, but they could catch Florida State here in a letdown spot. The Noles coming off a tough loss to Duke. They shot terribly in that game, just 17% from beyond the arc in that game. Now they take on this Syracuse zone, which is going to push them to the perimeter. And should the cold shooting continue, I think SU has a great opportunity here. All eyes are going to be on Elijah Hughes and his status for this game. He injured his groin in warm-up before the loss to NC State. However, he did tweet out that it's nothing major. People are expecting him to play, and should he, I think Syracuse can give Florida State a good fight this weekend.
I don't see how it could be an NCAA tournament without a Boeheim in it, but that's just me there, man. Duke and Louisville came out as number 2 seeds in the projected top 16 field for the NCAA tournament last weekend. Which of those 2 ACC powers has the best chances of moving into the number 1 seed before we actually hit Selection Sunday, Jason?
Yeah, sure. So Duke always seems to get a little extra love from the selection committee, but you know what? I think Louisville is better set up despite the setback to Georgia Tech. And because of that, it's their schedule. So they still have a ranked opponent in Florida State to come. And then they play some second-tier ACC teams as well. Teams like Syracuse and Clemson and Virginia. If we look at the home stretch for the Dukies, no ranked opponents. Really a lot of kind of bottom-tier teams in the ACC. Perhaps they score some style points against those weaker opponents. And really their only marquee matchup is a February 29th trip to Virginia. So while the ACC tournament is going to, do the bulk of the lifting when it comes to number 1 seeds here, I think Louisville has the inside track.
Still can't believe they stubbed their toe against Georgia Tech. But, hey, anything can happen. And for those sizing up the ACC odds this weekend, what's a sneaky under-the-radar bet that not many people would know about?
All right, so how about Wake Forest and their ability to top the total? So if you're not familiar with how over-under betting works, essentially odds makers have a projected total of combined points for a game, and then they turn it over to bettors and say, is the final score going to go over, or is it going to go under that total? And if you've been picking the over in Wake games, you're very, very, very happy. They're actually gone over the total in 15 of their 24 games. They're 15, 7-2 over-under in the season. That's a 68% win rate for overbackers right there. The blame, or maybe the credit, goes to the defense or lack thereof. They're allowing 72 points per game, and we have seen their over-under results get a little wobbly here in recent games, just 1-2-1 over-under in their last 4. However, they take on the Miami Hurricanes this weekend, who are also a great over-bet, 15-9 over-under on the season. They've topped the total in 3 straight games. So if you're looking for some high-scoring action in the ACC this weekend that you want to get some money down on, perhaps that total for Wake and Miami is something you want to pay attention to come Friday night.
Definitely. Well, all I know is that by listening to you on Tuesday night for that Wake pick, I came out on top. Thank you for that one. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jason. We're going to be sure to keep an eye on all of those games, my man. All right, that ACC tournament is less than a month away. So let's take a look at the standings here. The same 3 teams are on top as usual, but Louisville's lead is a little smaller after last night's loss. The Cardinals are now 12-2 with Duke right behind them at 11-2. Florida State still hot on their heels. They're sitting at 10-3. Virginia all alone in 4th. The Cavaliers are 8-5, and then tied a game behind them are NC State and Syracuse, both 7-6. A handful of teams are fighting to get up to 500 in conference play. Notre Dame is 6-7, and a half game behind the Irish are Pitt, Boston College, Clemson, and Georgia Tech. They're all sitting there at 6-8. Virginia Tech close behind, 5-8, and 3 teams are fighting to stay off the bottom. Miami and Wake Forest are both 4-10. UNC checking in at 3-10. And as we get closer to March, each game becomes more and more meaningful, so you're not going to want to miss next week's chase for the championship. We're going to be keeping a very close eye on Syracuse this week. The upstart Orange will look to pull off at least one upset on the road. They're going to square off against 2 of the top 3 teams in conference before we see you again next Thursday. And it doesn't get the attention of another big Tobacco Road rivalry, but when Duke visits NC State on Wednesday, you know there won't be much love for the Blue Devils, especially not around here. Thanks for joining us for Chase for the Championship. Remember, you can watch a new episode every Thursday night at 7. And until next week, get out there and watch some basketball. See y'all next Thursday.